Okay, so we're going to start chapter 7, and actually chapter 7 we're just going to do 2 lessons. We're going to do 7.1, which is on multiplication properties of exponents, and then the next lesson is going to be on division. Okay, so let's first review what it is. What is an exponent? Okay, and if you recall, when you have something to a power, that is how many times, okay, so that exponent is how many times you multiply the base together. So the base is x multiplied by itself n times. So the big number is the base, the little number is the exponent, and then whatever this number is, that's how many get multiplied together. So for example, if I have x to the 4th, right, that means x multiplied to itself 4 times. Okay? All right, so today we're going to do 2 properties. The first one is going to be the product of powers. So if you have x to the mth power and x to the n power, what you can do is combine these by just adding the exponents. Okay, here's our example. We have x squared times x to the 3rd. So if you think about x squared, that's 2 of these multiplied together, times x to the 3rd, right? So here's your x squared. Here's your x to the 3rd. So think about how many of these do we have in total? We have 5 of them. So that's x to the 5th. Of course, I don't want you to write all of this out. I want you to just jump to the conclusion of taking the exponents and adding them together, and we keep that same base. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. We have a to the 7th times a to the 3rd. So we're going to add the exponents, 7 and 3. So we get a to the 10th. All right, next we have b. Now notice that we have a number in front of the variable here and a number in front of the w to the 3rd. So keep in mind, parentheses still mean multiplication. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the 2 numbers together. So I'm going to multiply 2 and -3 together, and then I'm going to multiply w and the w third to the 3rd together. Well, 2 times -3, that's going to be -6, and then w, we'll think that's a w to the 1st. So if we add the exponents, that's going to give us -6w to the 4th. Now you don't have to necessarily write this out the way that I did. You can just go right to combining the coefficients and then combining the variables. Okay, so let's take a look at C. Now, what I want to do is I want to combine the variables that are the same. So if I have an x to the 1st and an x to the 4th, that's going to be x to the 5th, right? 1 plus 4. And then do the same thing with the y's, right? So if I have x squared and, y squared and y to the 3rd, combine those, now we get y to the 5th. So our answer is x to the 5th, y to the 5th. If you want, you can pause it here, maybe try the next few on your own and then see if you got them right. Okay, so again, what I'm going to do, I'm going to combine the coefficients. So -3 times 4, so that's going to give us a -12. Next, I want to combine the a to the fourth with the a to the first. So that's a to the fifth. I want to combine the b squared with the b to the sixth. So add the exponents, 2 plus 6, that gives us 8. And lastly, I have c and c to the seventh. So remember, there's always a 1 there. So c to the first and c to the seventh will be c to the 8th power. Okay, let's look at the next one. So the 4 and the negative 2 get multiplied, so that's going to be negative 8. Then we have g to the third times g to the fifth. So add the exponents. 3 plus 5 will give us 8. And then lastly, I have this h, and there's nothing to combine with it, so I'm just going to put that at the end here. So my answer is negative 8g to the 8th h. Okay, next one. Now I have 2 squared times 2 to the third. So that's going to be 2 to the fifth. And then I have a times a squared. So that's going to be a to the third. I have a b times b. So remember, those both have a 1 there. So b times b is going to be, b squared. And lastly, I have a c here, nothing to combine with the c. So we'll just put that at the end. Now, if I have numbers, I actually want to multiply those out. Now, what you could do, I could do 2 times 2, that's 4. And 2 to the third, that's 2 times 2 times 2, which would be 8, and then multiply those. Or use your calculator, you can put in 2 to the 5th power. That's going to be 32. So again, if you have numbers, multiply those out. Otherwise, leave all the variables with the exponents. Okay, so the other property we want to look at for today is the powers of a product. Okay, so if you have x to the xy, to the m power, you're going to multiply that exponent to each of those variables. Or if we have x to the m power raised to the n, you're going to multiply, right? You're going to multiply how many times x to the m gets multiplied together, which is n times. So when it's right next to, so in other words, when you have an exponent that is next to the parentheses like this, you're actually going to multiply these. Think about this. What we're saying is there are 3 x squareds. We have 3 of those. So that's going to be 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. Again, the easiest way to think of this is we're multiplying these together. So we're taking 3 times the 2. All right, let's look at our next example. So we have a to the 5th raised to the 2nd power. So we're going to multiply 5 times 2, which gives us a to the 10th power. Okay, m squared n to the 4th raised to the 4th power. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to multiply the 4 to the 2 for the m. So that's going to be 2 times 4 gives us 8. And then multiply the 4 to the 4 for the n power. So that's going to be 4 times 4 is 16. You'll notice with a lot of these, there's not a lot of work to show, and that's fine. Okay, you just want to make sure that as you're multiplying, make sure when you're combining them, you multiply the exponents for these. Okay, next one. Now think of that 2 still has a power of 1. So I'm going to multiply 2, we have to the 4th power, times a, and we have 3 times 4, to the 12th. Now 2 to the 4th is going to be 4 times 4, which is 16, a to the 12th power. Okay, next one. Now I have a half and I see a 2 here. So that means I'm going to have 1/2 to the 2nd power, c, so multiply, that's going to be c squared, multiply d to the 3rd raised to the 2nd power is going to be d to the 6th. Now 1/2 squared really means 1/2 times 1/2. Again, you can use your calculator for this, but if you have fractions, we're just going to multiply the numerator, multiply the denominators, so we get 1/4 c squared d to the 6th. Okay, now they're going to get a little more complicated because we have this 3 outside of this one, and then we have the 2 outside of this one. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to multiply the exponents first, and then we're going to have to combine everything. Okay, so let's do the first step. Okay, so I have -5 to the 3rd, and we can use our calculators for that. And then we're going to multiply m squared raised to the 3rd power is going to be m to the 6th, and then n to the 3rd power. And we want to multiply that. So let's do the next power. So that's going to be a 2 on the outside, so it's going to be 3 squared. Sorry about that. So we have 3 squared, and then multiply the 4 times 2, so that's going to be m to the 8th. And finally we have the 5th power times 2, so that's going to be n to the 10th. Okay, on your calculator, -5 to the 3rd, so that means -5 times -5 times -5, so that's going to be -125. And I'm going to combine that with the other coefficient here, so that's 3 squared, which is 9. So I'm going to multiply it by 9. Okay, now let's combine m to the 6th, m to the 8th, so that's going to be m. Now remember, when we combine variables, we're going to add the exponents. So that's going to be to the 14th power, and then I have n to the 3rd and n to the 10th, so that's going to be n to the 13th. Now I just want to multiply together -125 times 9, so that's -1,125, and then m to the 14th, n to the 13th. All right, next one. Okay, now notice I have an exponent here, an exponent here, and then I have ab to the 2nd power. So what we can do is we can actually multiply those two together first. So leave the ab squared alone, do 3 times 2. That's going to be 6. And now we can distribute the exponent. So we're going to do a to the 6th and then b to the 12th. Now that's not the only way you can do it, just so you know. You could do the 3 first, multiply that to each of these parts, and then take the 2 and then multiply that to the result. You'll get the same answer, a to the 6th, b to the 12th. Okay, next one. Okay, so these next two, G and H, those are similar to E, so if you want to give it a try and see if you get the same answer as me. Okay, so first I'll do third. Now this negative in front is really a -1. So if I do -1 to the third power, that's going to be -1 times -1 times -1, which is just -1. And then we'll have m to the 6th power. So remember, we're multiplying exponents first. Then that's going to be n to the 3rd. Next, I'm going to multiply this. Now, -3, I'm going to put that in parentheses. If you want to do it all at once, -3 squared, so that would be -3 times -3, which would give us a +9. And then I'm going to multiply here, so m squared, n to the 8th. So this will be a +9 here, right? Negative times negative. And then I have that negative out in front. So I'll have a -9. Always move those coefficients to the front. And then I have m to the 6th, m squared. So I want to combine those. So we're going to add the exponents now. So that's going to be m to the 8th. And then I'm going to combine n to the 3rd and n to the 8th. And that's going to be n to the 11th. Okay, H. So there's nothing here. So that really just means there's a 1. So I'm not going to have to worry about that first part. So I'm going to leave x, y to the 3rd. And then we'll combine it with the next part. So here I have a 4. I'm going to distribute. So I get x to the 8th. And then that's just going to be y to the 4th. And now I want to combine. So I have x and x to the 8th. So that's going to be x to the 9th. Combine that with y to the 3rd and y to the 4th. That's going to be y to the 7th. Okay, our last example says express the area of the figure as a monomial. Monomial just means that we're going to be multiplying them together. So this is a rectangle. The area of the rectangle is base times height, or you can think length times width. So we'll say this is our base, and we'll say this is our height. So what we want to do is multiply those together. So we're going to have 3ab squared times 2a squared b. Okay, we don't have any exponents outside, so we're just going to combine everything. So 3 times 2 is going to be 6. I have a and a squared. So that's going to be a to the 3rd. And last I have b squared, and that's a b to the 1st. So that'll be b to the 3rd power.